Hello everyone, Amy R here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with some Halloween creations using some of the newest honeybee stamps and wafer dies. I lost no time in pulling out the House Builder wafer die set as well as the Halloween House Builder add-on. And what I find with sets like this is I go through all of my scraps. This is a great way to use up scraps. I remember back in the day, it used to be like, don't keep anything smaller than 2 inches square, toss all those extra scraps. I save all of them because they're so handy. I don't have to sit and cut down larger sheets when I have all these little random pieces like the orange pieces and etc. Like they always come in handy now with all the little wafer dies we have. So that's what I did. I have my little pile of cardstock, everything ready to go. So then all I have to do is start running everything through my die cut machine. And a lot of it I'm die cutting multiples of, like the trees and the bats, the pumpkins, the ghosts, etc. And then I just set everything aside and then continue with all the die cutting. And I'm using obviously most of the elements from the Halloween House Builder add-on, as well as several elements from the actual House Builder set, because you need that for the base, for the fold. I'm using the parts to create the little gable because it's too cute not to. And just doing all my die cutting at once so that once I'm done all the die cutting, that's it. All I'll have to do is start assembling. So with these sets, specifically the House Builder set, it creates an A2 sized card, which in the shape of a house, which I think is just adorable. If you use just the House Builder, it's such a great little set for, welcome to, congrats on your new home, etc., etc. Halloween one, obviously Halloween. After I was done making this, I was like, this would be so much fun to do in multiple colors. And then you could like prop them all up as a display, like not even necessarily use them as cards, but they would make the cutest little display. I need more time in the day. Anyway, for the actual like front of the house, I die cut it first. And then I'm running it through with these little window dies, which I can't even remember which one, if they're from the Halloween one or from the main one. But I ran them through, and the first one accidentally kind of ended up going on an angle, and I was like, why not? Let's go with it. It's the whole point of like Halloween things being a little wonky, not being exact. So ran that through to die cut the windows, and then I did the same thing with the little gable piece. Is I ran the little circular window through and purposely offset it. So it's not perfectly straight. Everything's got to be a little bit wonky. So once I've got all of this die cutting done, I'll set aside my die cut machine. And for this card, I have decided to do a bunch of ink blending onto all these die cut pieces. So I ended up pulling out this random, I have this little brick wall stencil. And I thought that would look really cute on this house, of course. So I'm using some various Simon Says Stamp dye inks and then this large blending brush from Picket Fence. And I'm just blending dark gray ink over what will be the card front. And then I'm also going to use that on the little gable piece. And then there's also a little chimney that comes in the House Builder set. So I had die cut that from the gray cardstock as well. So I blended all that so that everything, is consistent. And then I'm going to do a ton of ink blending on all the other pieces. I find when you just die cut cardstock, it can look really flat. It doesn't have much dimension, anything like that. So an easy way to add that just extra dimension and kind of finish it off is just blend some ink on it. So I have various inks here. I'll have all the colors specifically listed, but I was just using Slate, which is a really dark gray. I was even using some black dye ink just to really deepen up. I used it here on the house and whatnot. And then I'm also going to use like a really dark brown, dark orange, etc. And I use this one brush for everything because I was more than okay with some of the colors kind of mixing. If I'm doing different things or, a lighter piece, if that makes sense, I would try harder. I would either use more than one brush or I would really clean my brush on between. But this is another one of the perks about this being like a Halloween house is these colors kind of mixing together are okay. So that happened kind of on the pumpkin. I had a bit of brown on there and it, mixed in with the orange, but ain't nothing wrong with that. And I'm using a large brush. Like I have ink all over my fingers. I got it everywhere. I don't care. I was having so much fun. I made a big old mess and I had an absolute blast making this. So this roof comes with the Halloween one and I love it. I love the detail on it. So, I added some purple ink and then I ended up adding some gray ink just to kind of deepen it a bit. And then all these inks do blend back a bit as they like soak into the color cardstock and then fully dry. So they'll look darker initially, but then they will dry back a fair bit. So just keep that in mind too. That's also why I was adding some black here and there, just to, you know, intensify it a little bit more. But yeah, went along, blended everything, used a microfiber cloth to clean off my brush, and then I get to assembling. And I've just kind of super sped this up because it, you know, you don't need to see it in real time, in my opinion. It's pretty basic. It's pretty easy. But yeah, I literally just started assembling. My head and my messy hair gets in the way multiple times because I want to make sure things are lined up. I had die cut another piece of like the house to back what's going to be the front. I just die cut it from black cardstock. Just because it gives it a more clean finish on the inside rather than just gluing pieces behind the windows and whatnot. So I had done that, and then I just start assembling everything. So we've got the fun little door and the little fence, and there's even a little topper piece for the door. There's the boards, so you can board up the windows, board up the door. Like, it's so much fun. And you can see in my pictures at the end of the video, and I'll have the pictures on my blog, there's also a lot of like embossing detail in a lot of these, like in the boards. There's little embossing details, you know, to give them texture. That roof, that fabulous roof, has some amazing embossing to show. It makes it look like, you know, a cedar roof. The door has embossing. The pumpkins have embossing in them. So everything just gives it that little extra bit of texture. So I'm just going along and adding all these things. The trees, if you were planning on mailing this, you'd either need to put it in a larger envelope because this house does fit in an A2, but it just fits. But with the trees, obviously it makes it longer. If I was going to mail this, I would probably either use the bigger envelope or I would just trim off the edges. But I really liked how it looked. And that's where I was like, oh, this would make a perfect little display. So it's just up to personal preference, but I left them because it was too cute not to. So I just kept going along and adhering everything into place. I adhered everything flat with my Craft Tacky glue. You could really go all out and start adhering things with, you know, foam tape and bump it up with dimension and all that fun stuff. Again, that would look really cute if you were going to do a little like Halloween display. All the ideas. Anyway, I got everything adhered into place except for the ghosts. The ghosts, of course, need some little bit of treatment here. They need to glow in the dark because I'm kind of obsessed with this right now. So I trimmed off the excess just along the bottom there, just so that, you know, the card would stand flat if I was to pop it up, or like the recipient wanted to pop it up. And then adhered some of the bats into place. And then for these little pumpkins, of course, I die cut them from white cardstock. And I just grabbed a scrap of one of the outlines from the houses. I grabbed that and I'm just going to apply some little, this is honeycomb tape runner. So it's a removable adhesive. So I can pop these ghosts onto that so I have a handle, because these are small and I don't want to burn my fingers. Plus I want to fully coat all of these, starting with just some clear embossing ink. So I'm pressing them really good into my clear ink pad and just using Post-it tape to kind of protect my fingers so I don't get ink all over my fingers. And then I coat them with glow-in-the-dark embossing powder, which is just the best of the best. This is so fun. I did this on my first Halloween video this year, and everyone was really enjoying seeing how the little ghosts glow in the dark. So now it's like, I think you guys are going to see this like 50 times from me this year because it's fun and it's really cute. So after I melted everything, I was able to just pop those off that little makeshift handle. And then I'm just going to kind of tuck them in here and there on my little house here. So they're coming out the windows and coming out the tombstones, and just so cute. So I've got those all adhered into place. And then for the inside of the card, I just die cut another piece of gray cardstock. And then there's that long gray piece that is going to be the fold to actually make this into a folding card. So I stamped a sentiment on the inside with purple ink. The sentiment is from the new Fabulous Sentiment stamp set. I also stamped on the front of the card with just some white pigment ink because I thought that gave it just a cute look. And I also stamped the Beautiful sentiment on the inside with white pigment ink. It's subtle, but I wanted it like that. I didn't want it to be obvious, but it's just like Happy Halloween, beautiful, like, you know, subtle. So I stamped the eek and the boo directly onto the house with that same white pigment ink. Just leaving it as is, doesn't have to be perfect stark white. And then that little fold piece, I reinforced it with my bone folder because it does emboss the score line into it as well. So I just reinforced it just to make sure it folded back and forth really well. And you could use liquid adhesive for this, but I prefer score tape. It's quicker, it's easier, Don't have to worry about anything oozing out if you use too much liquid adhesive. And I have the 1/8 inch score tape. Highly recommend this. This comes in so handy. And you just apply it on both sides, like just like so. Peel off the backing off the one side, and then it lines up perfectly along the top of the inside of the house here. Again, my head kind of gets in the way. I'm just looking at it from above to make sure I got that applied straight. And then all I got to do is peel off the backing on this other side, and then I'm going to line that up with the front of the house, fold it closed, and now this is an open and close card. You know, a top folding card, A2 size, shaped like a house, like a haunted house. How fun is this? I'll show at the end what the little ghosts look like when they glow in the dark. But before I get to that, I ended up making just a card as well, using a lot of the elements. Rather than make just a house-shaped card, I'm just making a normal A2 card with a lot of similar supplies. So I just have some more white cardstock here, and I am blending on those inks that I used for the blending on the house. So I'm starting with the purple ink, blending that onto it with that same large blending brush. And then these inks, especially with the Simon Says Stamp inks, they smooth out more as they dry, because it's the same idea as how I said with the color cards, like how it just kind of soaks in and smooths out and kind of lightens up a little bit. It does the same thing when you do ink blending like this. Like as it dries, it smooths out. So I blended on the purple, and then I added some of the slate. I made a big mistake with the purple when I dropped the ink pad lid on there and created a smear. Covered that up with the slate and the black ink. Now you can't see it. We're good. So blended on the slate ink, added some black ink. So now I have this kind of like, you know, spooky Halloween sky going on. Again, it looks kind of darker here, but in the end, after it's fully dry, it kind of lightens up a little bit. So I got all that blended on. And then, of course, I'm going to add some splatter because I didn't get, you know, my splatter fix on the first one. So I put this in my splat box, and I have Ranger's Perfect Pearl powder and water in a little mini mister here. So all I have to do is shake this up really, really well to incorporate it all again, get that powder mixed in with the water. Once that's mixed up really well, I can just take the nozzle right off, and then I just flick it right at my little background that I've created. And I do this a few times because I'm heavy-handed with the splatter, as always. So this will be shimmery splatter when this is dry. And then I also wanted to add just some white splatter just to kind of finish it off. So I grabbed some Distress Picket Fence paint, just white paint. It's a very thin consistency, so I don't need to water this down at all. So I just put that on an acrylic block and then flicked my paintbrush against the edge of the acrylic block onto the background. So I get a nice little white splatter as well. And then I had die cut a bunch of the elements again from that Halloween house builder set. And I'm doing the same thing, except this time I got a little smart and I'm using a smaller brush to do the ink blending. This just made it go a little bit quicker. Plus my brush was already like, the big one was full of all that other ink and I was just too lazy to clean it off. I just rub them on a microfiber cloth and then go on to my next color. It's good to go. But it was faster to grab a smaller brush. So I'm using the exact same ink colors and all the same sort of elements and just blending on some ink just to kind of give them that little extra something something. And then after I've done all my ink blending on all of these pieces, I of course am going to do the same treatment to the ghosts because I can't not. So I die cut the ghost from the white cardstock and I am going to do the same thing. Grabbed another scrap of the cardstock. I'm going to add the honeycomb adhesive to that. So I've got some temporary adhesive to hold these in place. And then press the little die cut ghosts onto that. And then I can do the exact same thing. I'm going to press these into my clear embossing ink pad. And then make sure they're completely covered in the ink. Once I'm sure they're covered, I can pour over the glow-in-the-dark embossing powder. Make sure that's all poured on, tap off the excess, melt these with my heat tool using that little makeshift handle so that I don't burn myself. And then once these are all completely melted, I can put the excess back into the container, pop these off my little handle, and then start to like assemble my little scene. So I'd also die cut some black cardstock with the Scallop A2 wafer dies, which I'll get to in a second. But before I get to that, I wanted to stamp and emboss another sentiment from that Fabulous sentiment set. So I just white heat emboss this onto some of that same orange cardstock. And then I'm going to die cut that with one of the Banner Builder wafer dies. And then once that's die cut, I'm just going to use my paper trimmer to trim off the excess and also to cut this in half so I have it like each word is on its own piece so that I can adhere those to my card front. So I've got my black cardstock die cut with that scallop A2 wafer die. There's also stitching detail on this, which I don't think you can see it all in the video, but I think you can see it in the finished photos. But yeah, there's the scallops and then there's also a stitching line. So I'd made sure this rectangle with the ink blended background was slightly smaller, just so you could see that little bit of stitching detail. And then I'm just going about the exact same kind of process I did in the house. I'm just adhering everything and creating a little scene, just this time not on the house. So I adhered my little fence. I put on the little tombstones here and one of the trees. And then I'm going to add my little ghosts and my sentiment. And the little pumpkins. I'd completely forgot at this point that I had die cut a bunch of bats to go on here as well. But I'll remember. I actually remembered when I started cleaning up. I had already filmed like this entire video. I had filmed the ending part where I show the cards, everything. Started cleaning up. Came across this little pile of die cut bats. So I had to go back, add those. Because of course, you can't not add them. They're all meant to go together. So adhered my sentiments. And then I tucked the ghosts into place. I tucked one more up there. And I had a few extra die cut pieces because I'd purposely die cut, doubles of a few things because I wanted to add those to the inside of the card. And I used a gray card base. And I just love how these pieces look. Like this would make a great little card too on its own. But of course, I always have to finish the inside with something. But I really like how these looked on the gray. Like just simple. You wouldn't even have to do ink blending or anything. Just have a gray piece, add all the little elements, stick that on a card and you're good to go. So adhered all my little characters. I'd use that brick stencil on the front as well. Just, tie it all together. Plus I just like the look of it. Adhered all this and then, finished all my filming, yada, yada, yada. Came back, added the bats because I die cut multiples of them. So I adhered those into place with the craft tacky glue as well. Added some to the front. And then added the remaining ones to the inside, which just kind of finished it all off. And then that is both my cards using the House Builder and the Halloween House Builder wafer dies and the Fabulous Sentiments stamp set. I will have a supply list with links to all the supplies I used. I'll have pictures here. I went into my closet, as I do, because there's no window in there, so it gets really black, and took these photos with my phone with the little glow-in-the-dark ghosts. So cute. So all the ghosts, including the one on the inside of this card, glow in the dark. So as always, there'll be links below the video to my blog post, links to the supplies. This is also part of a blog hop. So there's tons of inspiration and giveaways. That will be in my blog post. So check out the description box below the video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.